I'm interested in smart, healthy buildings simply because I think they've got a fantastic opportunity to make us happy.
You're listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marson, taking you on a journey into smart buildings. In this episode, we'll explore wellness and how it links to smart buildings. Harry is a sustainability and wellbeing expert who has led a citywide sustainability roadmap for Jakarta in Indonesia on behalf of the World Bank, as well as being the sustainability lead for a number of new town developments in the UK and lead author of WSP's Healthy Buildings Toolkit. He's also an award winner for his research into the linkages between pro-environmental behaviour and happiness. We've brought him into the studio today to discuss smart buildings and wellness. Harry, welcome.
Hi, Matt.
So to start with, how would you describe a smart building and why do you think people should invest in them?
A smart, healthy building is one that has far more controls in it, more centred around us as users. So we see more control around things like temperature, like light, more displays so that occupants can make their own decisions about when, for example, to open windows, depending on the quality of the air outside, or the amount of CO2 on the inside, for example. But on top of that, there are also more automated systems, such as in the lighting. You can look for circadian lighting.
Don't know what that is. What is circadian lighting?
It's lighting that's more in tune with your 24-hour body clock. So naturally, the sun comes up in the morning, it's brightest during midday-ish, and then it wanes in the afternoon and the evening. And what we want to see is lighting that mimics that. The worst thing to do is have blue lighting saved from your phone or your tablet. You're looking at that just before you go to bed because that's going to wake you up. What you want to see is some red hues in the light. So your smart building would integrate those sorts of technologies. But then I think also more widely, especially in terms of wellness, the thing is to understand it in a wider field than the building itself. So you can look at how the building can optimize or enhance your activity opportunities. So technologies like Step Jockey, where you can track the steps that you take up and down the building, for example, or smart barcodes on food. If there's a cafe in the building as well, can help you understand what you're eating and the impact that's going to have on your health, as well as reducing stress in terms of organisation. So what desks you go to or meeting rooms and factors like that.
Okay, so we're talking about a lot of integration for building technology systems and also more peripheral services. So why would people want to invest in that sort of thing?
So I think the business case around smart buildings is actually one of the key drivers that we can see fairly well proven in the research at the moment. I think that, uptake is a different question, but in terms of why you'd want to do it, first off, I would say it's about the people. So it's about attracting and retaining talent. The workforce these days is fairly mobile, highly mobile in some instances, and businesses use their office as a means for competitive advantage. The other piece, of course, is around productivity and profit. If you can have a healthy, productive workforce, you're going to be driving more profit out of the people within your organisation. And then the final thing is if you're a developer, for example, looking to build commercial office and sell it speculatively, then a wellbeing strategy that's based around smart technologies can be a real differentiator in the marketplace.
Understood. We've noticed from a lot of the client conversations that we've been having, certainly, that health and wellness is becoming increasingly top of the agenda. And what do you think has been the main driver for that?
Yeah, it's interesting to reflect on that because I think the biggest driver of it has to be the business case. It's all about productivity, but through people's well-being. So it's kind of like a win-win. The business, it becomes a better business, it makes more money, but then also the employees have a nicer working environment. So you get to win on both fronts there in terms of the employees and the business. It has been slowly rising up the agenda, I think, over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I'd like to see it moving quicker, obviously. I feel like, as somebody working in this environment, that the last year or so it's really taken a step forward, which is fantastic.
From some of the conferences that I've attended, they seem to attribute the growth in interest in health and wellbeing to millennials. Now, I'm not strictly sure that that's true. I don't think it's only young people that want to be healthy. Surely the older generations get something out of it as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't attribute it to millennials. I think there is a tendency to think that millennials coming into our workplace is going to change everything. But, the amount of people who aren't millennials in our workplace still is more in terms of numbers than the millennials in our workplace, I believe. So their influence is still going to be great, and I don't think you'd find many people not wanting a healthy workplace. I think it's just one of those intuitive things. It's another factor that we find when we talk about well-being is that it's actually quite intuitive to people, of course. It's something everybody seems to want. There are different elements of it, and I think it's quite clear and structured in some of the assessment methodologies, which helps it become tangible, actually.
And what are those assessment methodologies?
So the two most prevalent are the Well-Building Standard, and the other one is Fitwell, which is gaining traction, I think. Both of them developed in the US and by different organisations. Fitwell was developed by a department of the government, and the Well-Building Standard was being developed by a business. So they sort of have different drivers in that respect and prices associated with them, and actually depths of involvement as well. So, depending on what you're after, one standard could be more applicable than the other.
Have you got any examples of where you would go for one instead of the other?
Yeah, so grade A new build office would be more focused, I think, on the Well-Building Standard. It's designed for that. A project that WSP is working on is 22 Bishopsgate. That is going for the Well-Building Standard. That's like an iconic central London office development. It works really well for that. We also do a lot of work with asset managers and who have portfolios of buildings. And if you're looking to do a well-being strategy across multiple buildings, actually Fitwell provides a really good framework for that. And it sort of helps you identify the factors that are going to have the biggest influence on somebody's or a number of people's well-being. So it does work quite well for that.
My understanding is that we are drinking our own champagne and we will be doing the Fitwell standard in our own Birmingham and Manchester offices. Is that right?
We certainly are drinking our own champagne, yeah. We're going for Fitwell certification for Manchester and Birmingham. We're mostly about halfway along the process, I'd say. We're doing a pretty good job, actually. We've got some really good well strategies in place, and we're looking to optimize those further in the coming months. And maybe there could be a chance for involvement in some smart systems as well that monitor air quality, for example.
So let's say I'm starting a new project and I want it to achieve one of these standards. What are Harry's top tips for a healthy building?
First one is consider it from the outset. So the site location of your building will have a huge impact on the well-being of that building for its occupants, which is quite a mouthful. But what I'm trying to say there is that actually there's a health dividend for being in a city than for being out of a city.
Really? That seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, but actually if you think about it, if you live in a city, you're more likely to take public transport or walk or cycle to work. If you live out in the countryside, you're more likely to drive. And the real problem in well-being at the moment is the rise of lifestyle diseases. So, the diseases that you attract because of the lifestyle that you live. So if you aren't very active because you drive to your office, you then sit at a desk and you drive home again, that's causing problem. Whereas in a city, you're a bit more likely to, as I say, use active transportation methods. You're closer to the doctor's surgery if you need it. You're probably more socially active as well, so that links into your mental health side of things. But also you've got a far greater opportunity for squash, for healthy food options, for rock climbing if that's what you want to do. So yeah, I think that there is definitely a healthy health dividend for cities. There is also obviously major factors that need to be addressed in cities, like air quality, that still do sort of impact you.
So how do you think that smart innovations and metrics have enabled tangible results?
So I think obviously what I said earlier was that one of the major drivers for health and well-being is productivity. That links into profitability. And I think the metrics that sit behind some of this are trying to make productivity tangible. And that's where I think that sort of nexus can work. So whether you've got less absenteeism because you've got a healthy office, or you have more profit made, more turnover made per hour worked, you can start tracking all of these things on metrics. And that tangibility, I think, is the thing that really businesses want, so they can understand what their productivity is pre and post interventions, for example. So if you were to put in a central staircase between two floors, you can start tracking these metrics to see what impact that's going to have before and then after it, which is really good. I think the other thing is that these well and fit well, they are metrics in their own right. They are frameworks for assessing the well-being of offices. And I think having standards is really useful for people, developers especially, to start to talk about the well-being benefits of their offices. It's obviously a very big topic, and without the frameworks in place, then you can end up with, say, one office talking about enhancements to daylight, another office talking about fantastic water quality, but as a purchaser you'll be very hard pushed to sort of compare the two. But now you've got these standards that come out, you can start to see, well, this office here has got a well gold standard, for example, and this one over here has got a silver. Therefore, what I'm going to conclude is that this is the healthier office.
Do you think we'll see a future where property developers will be able to use well and fit well as a strategic differentiator, particularly in charging more for leases?
Yeah, I think we're actually there. To be honest, I wouldn't say it's mainstream offices everywhere. I think there's a certain band of high quality office in central city locations that do use it as a differentiator. And there's research out there from some of the agencies that find landlords can lease offices for higher rates. Around 28%, I think, is research of landlords found that they could lease their offices for high rates if they've implemented a wellbeing strategy. But it's not just about high rates, actually, it's about shorter voids as well. So the offices, when they stand vacant, for example, not being vacant for so long. But then also, again, it's a highly competitive market if you're a developer too. And having some differentiator around wellness is proving to be quite a strong attraction for tenants. So one of the things we're seeing in developers, especially, is becoming sort of what they call well-ready. So they align themselves with these standards. They don't necessarily go for it and seek full certification, for example, the core and shell of the building. But say a tenant was to move into their building, they wouldn't have any trouble becoming certified if they wanted to.
From some of the things that you were telling us before, it seems there's a big expectation to kind of prove that health and wellbeing isn't that fluffy business case that we had in the past. So could you tell me a little bit about systems integration and how we might be using that to prove some of these business cases?
Yeah, there's a few things around systems integration, I think, that can help those sorts of things. It's quite a sad story, actually, but there's been a lot of press, just sort of zooming out a bit, the national press in the UK, especially around the impacts of air quality on our health. And tragically, there was a girl's death a few months ago, and the times that she went into hospital correlated really strongly, strikingly strongly, to days where the London air quality was excessively high. And it's those sorts of correlations that are, helping people to realise actually these environmental factors do have a huge impact on our experiences and on our health. And then that health does have a huge impact on our economic performance as well. So, for example, one of the linkages you could make is quantum of CO2 in an office to number of sick days stored on your sort of central data management system. Obviously, other sort of wider considerations like that.
Exactly. I've seen quite an increasing number of clients that are bridging the gap between their enterprise resource planning software, or ERP, with their Internet of Things platform, and they're doing exactly that. They're tying in some of their normal kind of attendance and absenteeism metrics with the actual physical qualities of the space. It's a really interesting time. In our next episode, we'll be talking with an ethicist called Connor Clark, who will be telling us why ethics is more important than ever in a world of machine-based decision-making. If something in this episode has piqued your interest, then have a chat with us. Email smart@wsp.com. You've been listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marson, and thanks for listening.